Again, the military have sent a very strong warning to those who are actually planning to sabotage the May 29 handing over. And then we have a report coming from the UN saying that Nigeria, Mali, and 4 other countries are likely to go through acute hunger this year. Good morning and welcome to the Dailies. I am Sele Elisha Dasham, and today on the show I have Joyce Jakada. Good morning, Joyce.
An August visitor in May. Good morning, Sele, and a pleasant morning to our viewers out there.
Yes, thank you so much for joining me today.
Always
on
a
the
pleasure.
Show. All right. We are live on Facebook and also on YouTube. You can do well to drop your comment or your contribution on any story that is of interest to you. And as we do it always, we'll open the phone lines later on so you can also air in your thoughts on any story that is of interest to you this morning. And we'd like to start going through the paper immediately with Joyce taking us through the Daily Times.
All right, on the Daily Times, we have Sudan crisis. Evacuees recounts ordeal as FG gives them 100,000 naira. Nigerians who were trapped in the troubled Sudan and have now been flown back into the country have been speaking about the gruesome ordeal they went through. And this is coming after days of planning and confusions in between. The stranded Nigerians finally made it out of the war-torn country and were evacuated from Egypt by Air Peace and the Nigerian Air Force. And we have Zachary, who hails from Plateau State, thanking the Almighty for safe return. We face so many challenges and we face so many troubles. We saw what we have never seen in our lives. We tried to call Nigerians' attention and the Nigerian government attended to us. So we are actually happy, Zachary told our reporter. Musa Ali Ibrahim, who hails from Kano State, also had a similar testimony to share, even as he lauded the government's effort in ensuring a safe return of students stranded in Sudan. The bold headline here says, Onaini Khan, Tinubu's camp in war of words over inauguration of president-elect. With the rider, army warns politicians against cattle handover. We also have NDDC proposes 2.28 trillion naira 3 years consolidated budget. Another story says APC ratifies suspension of Orjikalu, Onyema, Namani, and others. Military recovers huge arms, ammunition in fight against terrorists. And the last story here says stock market rebounds, gains 45 billion naira. And Sele, interestingly, May 29th, as the Nigerians count down to the day whereby President-elect, the governors, and then other members elected are going to be sworn in, especially those that had received their certificate of returns. A lot of issues have been coming up, and this Archbishop of Abuja has come out to talk about the fact that it makes no sense that while petitions have been filed, tribunals are yet to make judgments, but inauguration will definitely take place. And for him, he said it doesn't make sense. These issues should have been settled before even the inauguration, and that way he can start from amending the Electoral Act, and if that is done, it makes more sense to him than inauguration and then petition. The petition tribunal are yet to make any like forge ahead with all the petitions, even though we know that from Monday the hearings will commence, will continue, but the Electoral Act should have been amended in a way that time frame will be given for all the petitions to be heard and case like settled before inauguration, instead of inauguration and then we seeing people going back to petitions and all of that. But in a swift response, Festus Keyamo, the Minister of State and Labor, who is also a chieftain of the APC, responded to that, and he said that the clergy should just face his clergy work, and he doesn't expect him as a statesman to come out and make such statement. And he raised the fact that all the issues that were said about Tinubu declared winner of the presidential elections were going to be declared null and void, because the issue of 25%, INEC has responded to that, and then the issue of drug, he referred to that as fake, that all these cases are going to be, that they don't hold grounds and all of that. And he went ahead to say that what the clergy is saying is a selected judgment, because during Buhari's time, Obasanjo, Jonathan, Sudan. He didn't come out to say, oh, Electoral Act should be amended, that petitions should be had before inauguration. Why is he coming out to say that now? That because him and other clergy that came out to talk felt that, oh, the person they were supporting didn't win, and no wonder he's coming out to say that. I'm sure you have something to say to that.
You know, Joyce, it's really quite unfortunate, and it's an eyesore to me, looking at the fact that a lot is going on, and then we're still seeing that, whether we like it or not, because that is what it looks like, the handing over will still, you know, take place. And then it was even on the papers where they even told us that who said, especially coming from the APC, that who said that tribunal have to be, you know, have to be, whatever it is they have, the petition has to end before the handing over. That they will go on with the handing over before the petition. But one thing I want us as leaders is all about accountability and knowing the fact that for every step you take, followers have now realized their rights, and they are going to follow each of the steps going forward. We've seen the various candidates coming, the Labour Party, the PDP, saying that they have all their facts ready, so they'll be going to the court. So just like, even though we're having, I don't know how long it will take from Monday before, because from now we have barely 25 days or so to the handing over. So whatever it is going to be right now, we'll just keep our fingers crossed. I just don't want to say anything right now, but let's just see how things keep going from the petition on Monday. And then I think from there I'll pick it up and then see more to add to my, you know, my own thoughts of all of these issues.
Well, the Archbishop has actually made his points. I'm talking about Archbishop Emeritus of Abuja Catholic Archdiocese, John Cardinal Onyeini Khan. He has made the comment, he has decried the delay, especially in the election tribunal and all of that. He has the freedom to express himself. True. And as well as anybody that feels, oh, I want to counter this allegation and all of that. But in everything, what we need is a system that works. What we need is a system that represents the interests of the people. And at the end of the day, I think Nigerians will applaud when the things that are being done are transparent and done well. That is all on the Daily Times newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the Daily Independent newspaper, starting with the big story: how I will tackle corruption in the judiciary by Tinubu. The writer say, explain why he said, I owe Wike nothing. So you can find more of that story on the front page and inside the paper. Military again warned politicians against scrutiny in May 29 inauguration. Gunmen on rampage in Anambra killed 3 policemen. You can find more detail of the story inside the paper. Cost of electricity consumption in Nigeria, cheapest in the world, coming from the federal government. Wike warned against making Nigeria ungovernable for Tinubu. You can find more detail of that on page 7. Coming from Imo, passengers stranded at the airport over the NLC strike, which you can find on page 6. Federal government gives 100,000 naira each to the 376 Nigerians evacuated from Sudan. Coming from AMCON, foray into aviation sector, misplaced judgment coming from the arts president. And then we also have setback as court salt separate May 10 AGM. You can find more of that on page 7. It's wrong to swear in Tinubu governors with cases in court. We can still find that story. And last, on the downside of the paper, we saw group tax presidential election petition tribunal as hearing begins. You can find more of that on page 6. We have the picture story showing Nigerians that actually returned from the Sudan. We can see them coming. We're excited about them being back, and we hope that more, proactive measures will be taken for those who are still there. And that's on Daily Independent.
All right, moving to the new National Star newspaper, we have the first story that says election tribunals, judiciary must remain impartial. Independent, says Gowon, and you can find details of that story on page 25. And on Sudan, we need 4 aircraft to bring back Nigerians, says FG. Details of that story is on page 7. UTME candidate breaks record, scores 99 marks in mathematics, 337 in total. Details of that story is on page 8. And the bold headline says, Onyeini Khan, Amadi kicks against Tinubu's inauguration on May 29. Those that manipulated 2023 elections result know themselves. That's coming from Onai Yekan. And we have another rider that says it is not automatic to swear Tinubu in on May 29. That's coming from Amadi. Also, you are an embarrassment to the body of Christ. Keyamo Blast Cardinal. Details of that story is on page 23 and 2. We have another headline here that says, flush out dead persons' fictitious names from registered voters list. Reps tells INEC. Details is on page 2. We have APC certifies suspension of Oyema, Ojikalu, Namani, Oga, Ukechukwu, 23 orders, and you can read that story on page 24 of the National Star. Reps OK's Buhari's 22.7 trillion ways and means loan request. Details of that story is on page 10. The conversation began yesterday, earlier on this ways and means loan request by the president. Some will tell you the president barely has 25 days to hand over, and then we keep hearing of loans and loans. When I was hearing the reps, the members in defense, you hear the Senate talking about the fact that, oh, this is obtainable in other climes and all of that. But the fact is that when people borrow, when people like request for all of these funds, what do you use it for? That's the question. In other climes, we talk about infrastructure. You go there, you see a system that is working, but we keep borrowing and borrowing, and then the concern is for the next generation. What happens? How do we pay this? What about our revenue? What like if we have our system working, if we have the environment stable, enabling for SMEs, for other businesses, then I think we should think of revenue generation. We should think of how that we can, like, people keep embezzling, people keep like diverting funds. If we check all these records, I think it's going to help. We keep talking about our GDP decreasing and all of that. What are we doing to improve on that? But when you go to the SMEs, they complain about lack of electricity. When you go to some of these people that are really doing well, we've always talked about the fact that Nigerians are well able. When they go to other climes, you see them striving. They are being celebrated. Look at our doctors. Look at our nurses. Look at even our students. They are making the country proud wherever they find themselves. But here in the country, we always have a situation where, oh, you want to make the effort, or you are making the effort, but the policies, the system is not even enabling. Even if we emphasize on the fact that, oh, there's no excuse for failure, but there are things you cannot do on your own. If whatever you are engaged with, you need electricity, think about it when the electricity is not there. That means part of the money you're making, you're going to be using it in buying fuel to use generator and all of that. These are things that when you go to other climes, you barely see them taking out, like electricity and all of that. So I think we need to tour the path, or look at the areas of generating revenues and ensuring that these revenues are used judiciously. If we say these are obtainable in other climes, nobody is arguing that. But at the end of the day, what are we using it? Or we're just incurring debt for the next government, for the next generation? I think we need to rethink that. And on the issue of flushing out dead persons from the INEC register, these are issues that a lot of people have raised. And I think one of the members in the House during the plenary talked about the fact that his dead father, his name was out there. And then there are places where you see people's name appear in different polling units, and those people still go ahead to cast their vote. People talk about the flooded process. I remember during the 1st May Workers' Day speech of the president, he talked about the fact that, see, the 2023 election is flooded, is beyond standard. These are like pointing out to some of these things, irregularities that people keep talking about. You find out that dead people's name is actually on the register, is being posted to the polling unit and all of that. And INEC continue to defend that, saying, oh, we have been removing names and all of that. Can we have a system where families can report their dead ones and the names will be out of? We're introducing technology. We thought it's going to improve the system, it's going to make things better. But every day people keep pointing out to irregularities. So I think INEC needs to go back, considering all the observations that have been made. These are not things that we should just ignore. We have elections that are still coming. So I think these issues should actually be looked into, because if some people are having their names appearing in different places and then being allowed to vote, it constitutes like the irregularities that we keep emphasizing. So I think INEC should do the needful.
Of course, just to add up to what you said, I was really excited saying that this is one of the many right decisions that the House of Reps have actually taken to give INEC to go ahead. I mean, people have always brought this, to the attention of the INEC. The register needs to be clean. We need cleansing of the register, and I'm happy. I still talking about the means and ways loan that the federal government took here, and then the fact that the Senate approved it. When this ways and means, loan was actually placed in the cement, that was during the OBJ and Soludo when he was the governor, and that was like a means of saying that in case of emergency, and you're only supposed to take about 5%, Joyce. But we can see that we've been taking loan from that ways and means, and then just like you rightly, pointed out, we are not seeing what is this loan going to use for. We're still having uncompleted projects coming from various ministers. We're still having our transport sector falling or failing. We're still having the educational sector failing. No wonder Nigerians are in Sudan. And you begin to ask, what is it that we don't have in the country that we're having Nigerians going to countries like Sudan to go study? A lot of things are actually not going right. And we hope that this is not to say that the administration has failed totally, no. But we're trying to point out certain things that need to be done right before the incoming administration. No wonder people are coming up to say may not, handing over may not. But this is not, we don't want issues like that to actually come up in any. We want to have a very smooth handing over. But then let us make the process easy for everybody at the end of the day. So we hope that when we see federal government taking loan at the end of the day, our debt is over 40 or 70 trillion naira, talking about inwardly and externally too. So a lot of things need to be done. And I just hope that the government will actually look deep inwardly. It's one thing for us to make suggestions, but we hope that this suggestion fall in the right hands, and then the government or the right authorities that are started with that opportunity, or people who have been given that responsibility, will take it up and do the right thing at the end of the day.
Very true, Sally, and that's all.
All right, I think, are you done with that, Joy?
Yes, Sally.
All right, let's take the next paper, which is the Punch newspaper. And I would like to start with the first story. May 29 handover. Again, military wants saboteurs. Gowon cancel petitioners. With the rider, threat to new president inauguration will be promptly dealt with, says the defense headquarters. Keyamo knocks Oyeyinka for saying Tinubu shouldn't be sworn in before the tribunal verdict. And I would like to read a little detail of that story. The military has again warned against plans to sabotage the handover of power to the president-elect Bola Tinubu on May 29. The High Command said the armed forces were on standby and will ensure a smooth transition process scheduled to take place in 24 days. The Director of Defense Media Operation, Major General Musa Damadami, handed down the warning on Thursday as a former military head of state, Yakubu Gowon, advised candidates challenging the outcomes of the last election to accept the court verdict. Caution came a month after the Director of Defense Information, Brigadier General Tuku Gazu, vowed that the military should resist anything that would truncate democracy in the country. Also, the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Farouk Yahaya, has threatened to crack down on potential threats to national security and warned the indigenous people of Biafra, Eastern Security Network, and other French groups not to test the will of the military. Some aggrieved candidates had kicked against the planned inauguration of the president-elect and called for the interim national government. But addressing defense correspondent at the defense headquarters Abuja, Damadami stated that the military will ensure that the inauguration was not derailed. So you can continue to read more detail of that story on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. On federal roads, federal government pays state 859.7 billion naira in 8 years. Detail of that can be found on page 19. Government agency, military-owned electricity firms coming from the Senate. Reps raised Buhari's extra budgetary spending to 23.7 trillion naira. You can find that on page 19 too. Troops kill 40 insurgents, rescue 2 Chibok girls. You can see the 2 Chibok girls together with the troops that rescued them. 70% Southwest private school teachers unqualified coming from the TRCN. 25-year-old Regent farm worker drowns in Lagos River. And coming from Sudan, second batch of stranded Nigerians arrives today. You can find that on page 7, and that's all on the Punch newspaper.
All right, Sele, moving to the first newspaper we have on May 29. Why Tinubu's inauguration could be stopped. That's coming from Sam Amadi, and if you want to know more about that, you can pick the first newspaper. We also have over 90% of private school teachers in Southwest not qualified. This is coming from TRCN, that's the Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria. How my administration will make corruption unattractive in judiciary. That's coming from Tinubu, the president-elect. And he made that statement during the inauguration of the magistrate courts in Rivers State. And I think people will be asking questions earlier about what he intends to do. But during the inauguration, he talked about the fact that if the welfare of the judiciary is actually improved upon, then they won't be used as objects of corruption. Like, people won't have their way easily into the judiciary. We've seen how the Nigerians over time have expressed zero confidence in the judiciary, even with all the irregularities that were pointed out during the 2023, especially the presidential election, and as witnessed during the gubernatorial election in other states. People have been told, oh, go to the court and all of that. It became like a cliche. If you're angry, go to the court and all of that. So people will tell you, when you see people boasting, saying that go to the court, it's more like, oh, my elder brother is there and there's nothing that can be done. You get. But yesterday, during the inauguration of the magistrate complex in Rivers State, the president-elect, who was called to perform that function by Wike, talked about the fact that he will make sure that corruption is unattractive to the judiciary. And he said when you improve their welfare, their salary and all of that, they won't be instruments of corrupt practices and all of that. But like Nigerians will always say, we like to see the talk and do, not just the talk, because people will tell, oh, this is not different from what so many people have come out to say and all of that, but we'll look forward to that time. We also have Tinubu will be sworn in as president. Step back from murky water of politics, Keyamo warns Onayekan. Again, we won't spare politicians plotting to scuttle May 29 inauguration. Military says we've not seen reasons why Tinubu's swearing in won't hold, assures troops on standby to forestall any unwanted happening. We also have, it doesn't make sense to swear in Tinubu before tribunal's verdict. That's coming from Oneye Khan. And we have second batch of Nigerians fleeing Sudan expected to arrive last night. We also have Rivers. I don't want to fight Tinubu Abe on withdrawing case against Wike. Electricity cheapest in Nigeria, says FG. Wow. 10th Senate presidency, Tinubu National Alliance drums support for Senator Barrow Jibril, like still on the 10th National Assembly Senate presidency. A lot has been going on the ground, and well, some people are already drumming support for Senator Barrow Jibril. Nigerians have high expectations. Like, what is more important is who are the people that represent the interests of the people. Elections have been done, but beyond elections, we need a National Assembly, a 10th National Assembly that will not be a yes sir kind of National Assembly, but a lot of expectations are being held for the 10th National Assembly that will be inaugurated come May 29, because of the fact that it is a mixture of different political parties. Even though we see that APC have the highest number of members, followed by PDP and others, but there are a lot of other parties that people before now were not represented, but today, during the 2023 election, we saw that all those parties are actually represented at the 10th National Assembly that will be inaugurated on May 29th. We hope to have a National Assembly that will look at the people, the interests of the people and Nigeria as a whole. We always emphasize on the fact that we don't have any country apart from Nigeria, and if we don't make policies that get toward improving the country and the welfare of the people, then at the end of the day we have no country to stand for, to defend, and all of that. And that's why we keep calling on leaders, especially when they're derailing, to look at the bigger picture beyond personal interest. Where are we headed? Let's do the right thing, and when we do the right thing, posterity will clap for us.
Of course.
That will be all on the first newspaper.
Right, let's take a look at the next paper, which is the New Telegraph newspaper. On NIN, federal government targets additional 115 million women children to meet the World Bank's figure. You can find that on the front page and on page 3. Coming from MAN, Nigerians' manufacturing capacity utilization declines to 54.9%, which you can find on page 17. And on leadership, Nigerians' main problem coming from Professor Gambari, you can find that on page 4. 70% of private school teachers in the Southwest not qualified. Still, we're having the story coming from the TRCN. And I really think it's at this moment we have to just make a comment on this, because I don't think it's just in the Southwest that we're having teachers that are not qualified, but I think this is a problem that in Nigeria as a whole, we have to look at this issue of not having qualified teachers. I keep making reference to the fact that most of the teachers we have right now, or if you're going to take a look at our school curriculum, you will agree with me, Joyce, that nothing have changed for the past 20, 25 years. You see a teacher coming to the class with the same lesson note that was being taught to students that graduated 10, 20 years back. No research, nothing whatsoever is being done. And I think this is really something that we really need to look deep into. What can we do, especially when it comes to our educational sector? Because you will agree with me that the standard is dropping drastically every day. We saw last year when the Minister of Education admitted the fact that he has failed. But then I remember making the comment, I said, it's not just about admitting you have failed. What are you planning to do henceforth to make sure that the educational sector, something has been done about? Of course, I know you can be everywhere, and that is why you have other people in the state level. We have various ministries of education, commissioner of education. What are these commissioners doing in the state level to make sure that teachers that are teaching are really qualified? Are they NCE holders? We need to know, did they really go through thorough teaching, and how to be able to, it's one thing for you to know, but it's another thing for you to be able to teach someone else what you know. So I think it's really high time that we have the administration really taking the educational sector seriously, because this is what these are the lapses we see, and then it doesn't just stop in the secondary school, it goes up to the tertiary institution, and then we end up having half-baked graduates. You see that we have quack doctors, and this is where we have quack teachers, and a lot of occupations will see that they are not really qualified or not really solid to handle certain responsibility. So I'm looking forward to the fact that most of these teachers that are not qualified, not just in the Southwest, but in various states, let's go down to all the zones and see what is the problem, how can it be rectified. Do they need some training? It should be done. Why are we having students failing English and math year in, year out? What has been done about that? Do we need a seminar? Do we need to know where the problem is? I think we need to go down to the little things we are neglecting. And I think this will give us a way for to see that our educational standard is really going high again.
Stella, the reality is that I want to align myself with what a lot of people out there are saying, is the fact that in the nearest future, it will be about skills and talents. And why are people saying that? It is because today we have a lot of people that have come out from the higher institutions, from different stages of schools, and then they can't defend what they have on paper. You see graduates that barely read fluently. Like when you go to other states, like go to different organizations, why do we keep talking about the fact that unemployment is at about 40% and all of that, the people employable? What is the standard of education that they got from who? And that is why TRC, and in its effort to ensure that quality of education is improved, has come out with this figure. And if we had this just private schools, that what standards are most of these private schools built? even though we know, oh, it's to complement the effort of the government, because when you go to some of these government schools, is that what you see is an eyesore. Like, you see children sitting on the floor, dilapidated structures, the teachers, like, the state of their welfare too not encouraged, and no wonder people don't show enthusiasm or interest in what they do. And then when you go to the private school with the high payment and all of that, you find out that most of the teachers that are being employed are not qualified. People pay their way through to build schools, to employ, and all of these are stages that have to be monitored and supervised. We have like supervisory bodies and all of that, but at the end of the day, you see schools are built, people are just employed based on your family member. In some of the schools, you see that it's a whole family that are teaching, and check the qualification, probably they don't have what it takes to teach, and then these children keep turning out to the next class, to the next. Like, do you know that now, Sele, people, there are schools that don't repeat children because they are scared if they repeat your child, you change the school of the child. So they rather keep promoting the child. And you find someone in university that is asked to just read a sentence, struggling with the sentence. And a nation that is not educated is going nowhere in terms of development. And so I think education is something we should take very serious. Who are the people that are teaching? Today we talk about all kinds of moral decadence in our society. Why? What are the things that people learn in school? Every day in some of the states, or even the public holiday, like in a week in River State, for example, during the inauguration, ahead of the inauguration, there was public holiday. In a week, 2 public holiday, and it's expected that the students will be at home and all of that. So how do we look at education as a whole, from the budget to the employment, to the welfare of the staff? Who are the people? What is the standard of our education? For every country that knows the importance of education, priority is being given. And I think we can do more. We can improve on that. The TRCN have done its part, and I think the government must take this serious. Like, let's do something in terms of improving the educational system, so that at the end of the day, we won't be having policies that keep taking us 10 steps backward. Because who are the people representing you? What's the stage of education? Like, True. Trained by who? I think we need to do more in terms of prioritizing education, Sele.
Of course. Let's look at other stories before we go for the break. Why Nigerians must avoid religious bias during election, coming from Governor Sule. You can find on page 2. We still have on the Sudan crisis, 4 airlines declined to sign pact with the NAHCON as federal government welcomes 376 Nigerians back home, assures safe return for all citizens. Sudan generals unwilling to end the fight, coming from the UN. On 2023 polls, APC chief Taye asked the court to recover fertilizer cash given out for voters canvassing. You can find that on page 30, and we can still see the president-elect during an inaugural commissioning. You can do well to grab the New Telegraph, read more detailed of any story that is of interest to you. At this moment, we would just like to take a time out to actually let you digest some of the stories, and when we come back from the break, we will take your phone calls. Do not go anywhere, we'll be right back. Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, the program is the Dailies on your winning station, and we've been giving you some of the informations coming from our Nigerian newspaper. We've spoke about the 70% of teachers that are not really qualified coming from the TRCN. We've also seen the military sending a warning to people who are planning to sabotage the May 29 to actually be very, very careful. And also we've seen a lot of stories, on the papers. We've had some of the Nigerians have returned from Sudan. These, among many other stories, are what we looked before we went on the break. So at this moment, our numbers are displayed on your screen. you can do well to call us on any story that is of interest to you. Please do remember to turn down the volume of your TV set when you call us, and let's be very civil with our language. We know that emotions are high sometimes, but please let's be very, very, cautious of what we say. And then please you remember that other people would love to hear from you. So please do well to turn down the volume of your TV set again. I still have Joyce Jakarta with me on the set. Thank you so much, Joyce.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Sarah.
All right, yeah. Let's go on with the newspaper review.
All right, moving to the Nigerian Tribune, we have the first story again on 70% of private school teachers in the Southwest unqualified to teach, coming from the TRC, and details is on page 4. I will support education until I leave planet Earth, Afe Babalola. Details is on page 4. Reps want dead voters removed from INEC register. Details of that story is on page 23. We also have our audio returnees from Sudan recount. With the rider, 4 aircraft conveying about 400 returnees being expected. FG mobilizes 2 Nigerian airlines, Sudanese local airline, No Nigeria, who wishes to come home will be left behind. This coming from Humanitarian Affairs Minister, blames third-party vendors for glitches. Details is on page 2. And we have the picture story of the returnees, and we are glad, we are happy that they are back and they have been reunited with their families. Stella, you can imagine how that people were living in confusion. We kept talking about the fact that, oh, Nigerian government should do something about it. Think about how Nigerians were stranded at the Egyptian border and other places. Some talked about no access to healthcare, food, and all of that. And this is not a situation that anybody will be happy about, having a loved one out there. But from yesterday, we saw how that about 370 were returned, but more will be, that's according to FG, more will be returned home, and nobody will be left behind. And we give it to them for ensuring that everything is being made, plans, preparation to bring back all these people. We also give it to Allen Onyema, the CEO of Air Peace, for also in his usual duty and contribution to nation building, helping the evacuation of these returnees. We give it to him. And APC crisis, Lukman writes Adamu, NWC apologizes for embarrassing party leadership, with the rider confirms withdrawing suit against national chairman secretary. Details is on page 3. All elections petitions should be decided before inauguration of government on Nayekan. Details is on page 3. Gunmen kill 3 policemen, cart away arms in Anambra. You can find details on page 26, and that's on a sad note. No cause for concern over May 29 inauguration, Defense Headquarters. Details of that story can be found on page 27. That's all on the Nigerian Tribune.
On Nigerian News Direct, EFCC arrests 40 alleged cyber criminals in Ogun State. You can find that on page 3. NIPOS clamps down on 23 illegal culture operations in Abuja. And on mineral theft, stop encroaching mining site. Federal government warned traditional rulers, which you can find on page 2. And the big story on anti-party activities, shake up as APC OK suspension of former governors, ministers, other party big wings. In the Mani, Ojikadu Oyema enlisted. You can find more of that story on page 3. Still coming from Ogun, Abiodun State Administration fight against cultism, other criminal activities. You can find on page 3. At the back page, there is a column for Femi Adesina. You can do well to read more detail of that story. We can see some few picture stories reflected on the front page of the paper. You can do well, grab the Nigerian News Direct and read more stories that of interest to you.
Well, moving to the Guardian newspaper, we have the bold headline that says over $4 billion spent on overseas education in 8 years amid poor funding. neglect of public school, and that's on a very sad note. We keep talking about lack of funds, borrowing, and all of that, but look at what Nigerians are spending outside of the country just for education. Think about it. If we improve the educational infrastructure here, we improve on the quality of education, Nigerians won't have to go out there. When you look at our budget allocation, barely 5% is allocated on education. If we can do more, then we wouldn't need to go out there. Most of the Nigerians that are stranded in Sudan went there for educational purpose. So what happens if we improve on our education? We wouldn't need to go out there, that at the end of the day, maybe amidst this crisis and all of that, we have to spend more to bring back our own. Like, look at how much we are spending. We've spent over 8 years, $4 billion. I think our leaders should think and then do the needful, especially improving education. We just talked about the report by TRCN that says over 70% of private teachers are unqualified. So who wouldn't want the best education? Now look at all the delays, ASU strikes and all of that. How many times some people say, oh, it's an annual event, but at some point it became quarterly event. We keep making promises and we barely meet them. The welfare of teachers, the curriculum and all of that, we don't improve. No wonder people are already saying, see, the 21st century and beyond, what will matter is skills and talents. Let's do more improving our education so that at the end of the day, we don't keep spending our resources in building other people's educational system. Look at all these countries that you keep seeing Nigerians in large numbers going out there to study. Now everybody wants to just go to school, and then in the next 2-3 years you're done. Not a system whereby you were spending 8 years for 4 years course. That's unacceptable. We can do the needful by improving our own system. If that money you're taking to the Swiss account or other foreign accounts to hide them, you use it to invest in your country. Those structures you're building outside of your country, if you invest it in your own nation, then at the end of the day, it will be for the growth and development of the country. So our leaders should do the needful, especially in prioritizing education and then the country's interests as a whole.
Of course.
We also have apologies compensates for colonization. Abor James tells King Charles III. That story can be found on page 2. Fresh hurdles for air cargo as NACO raised charges by 100%. You can check that story on page 15. Tinubu promises to fight corruption, protects judges from vices. Details of that story is on page 27 of the Guardian newspaper. Reps ignore outreach. OK's Buhari's 23.7 trillion naira extra budgetary spending. Details is on page 5, and you ask yourself the question, who are the reps really representing? Is it the interest of Nigerians or the interest of few individuals? If we can ignore outreach by the masses, by the public, and go ahead with signing of bills that people have gone out there to complain about. At the end of the day, like I said earlier on, we don't want a National Assembly that will be just yes sir kind of National Assembly, but a National Assembly that will be critical. National Assembly that will put the interests of the people at heart and do the needful. That's all on the Guardian newspaper, Sally.
All right, let's take a look at the Nation newspaper. Adamawa Rec and others get bail, declaring Binani not wrong. I just hope that this will be, I was hoping that this would go longer than this, but we can see that they have actually, they have gotten a bail. So you can read more detail of that story on page 5. President-elect promises judicial reform, judges' welfare a priority. You can find that story on page 4. House OK's 1 trillion naira loan for federal government. 70% of private school teachers in the Southwest uncodified. You can find both story on page 7 and 25. And we have outbursts on inauguration. Onani car comes under fire. Senior lawyers not cleric for questioning president-elect swearing in. Defense headquarters saying nothing will stop the May 29 event. Accept tribunal verdict. Gowon tells Atiku, Obi and others it's time to move on. Gambari advises. You can find more of that story on the front page and on page 6. NDDC seek reps approval for 2.28 trillion naira 3-year budget estimate. You can find that on page 6. We still have the picture story. Sudan evacuates, our experience harrowing. You can find that on page 28. That's all on the Nation newspaper.
Moving straight to the Daily Sun newspaper, we have the screaming headline, Returnee students recount ordeal in Sudan, Egypt. With the rider we thought will die, they declare. FG promises 100,000 naira each to evacuees. We also have polls. President's inauguration before tribunal's judgment makes no sense. That's coming from Oneye Khan. Details is on page 4. We also have 1.6 million students who write 2023 WAS in 20,851 schools. Details is on page 27. NAFDAC bans promotion, sales of breast milk substitutes in health facilities. Details is on page 26. Arewa youths accuse NLC president of plotting against handover. It is ranting of politicians, says workers' body. Details is on page 27. Banking sector credits to private rises to 43 trillion naira in 3 months. That's coming from CBN, and you can find details of that story on page 2. Nigeria's unity, non-negotiable. That's coming from the president-elect Tinubu. Vows to make corruption in judiciary unattractive. Troops kill 30 terrorists, apprehend 48 in North Central, Northwest. Details is on page 4, and the picture story is of that of the returnee from Sudan. Air Peace plane arriving Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja from Sudan. And then we have first batch of 367 stranded Nigerians after their arrival. Chairman, Nigeria in Diaspora Commission, Abike Dabiri Erewa, cuddling a returnee toddler. And like we said again, congratulations to the those that have been united with their families, and we give it to the federal government, and we want to see that more evacuees are returned and reunited to their family. And Celia on the last story that says troop killed 30 terrorists, apprehended 48 in North Central, Northwest. We saw that during one of the operation of the troop of Nigerian military in the Northwest, some of the terrorists were apprehended, some were actually killed, about 70. We also learned that 2 of the Chibok girls were actually rescued, 26 years. They are Hawa and Esther. Esther was rescued with a baby girl of about 1 year, and then Hawa Malta with 8 months. In April, she had 8-month pregnancy, and she gave birth at the military facility. And they were all abducted sometimes in April 2014 when the Boko Haram insurgents group stormed their school while they were writing WAEC and then abducted the Chibok girls. You will recall that in 2018, the Boko Haram released about 107, and then in 2019, the military actually rescued 3. In 2021, they rescued 2, and then in 2022, they rescued 11, and then this year, April, they rescued 2, Awa and Malta, and 94 are still unaccounted for 9 years after the abduction. And if we're going by this number that have been rescued in 2019 to 2021, talking about 320, like you begin to ask you, because in total, like there are barely 17 that have been rescued within 9 years. So what happens to the 94 that are still unaccounted for 9 years after? Like I think we can do more, because if we're going by this number, like the years in between, in 2 years we're having just 2 rescued, then what happens to what's the fate of the 94 that are still unaccounted for? I think we can do more. We can do more in terms of ensuring that these 94 are being reunited with their family. You can't imagine the trauma. You can't even imagine what has happened. Some of these girls were abducted sometime like 18 years while they were 18. Now Hawa and Esther are now 26 years old. Like 9 years after they were married to these terrorists, and then the other one was rescued pregnant, the other one with a baby girl. Like, think about what they have gone through and then what their families are going through. The military said they are going to be handed over for trauma healing and all of that. Let's do more. Let's prioritize the interests of Nigeria as a whole. This is more like the terrorist group having their way. 9 years after, 94 still in abduction. Let's do more. We give it to the military for those that have been arrested. I think about 500 both ISWAP members and some of these terrorists, and I think over 100 people that were kidnapped or abducted have been also rescued, and some of the villages that were actually captured by this terrorist group have been recovered and returned to the owners. I think we can do more in terms of protecting the interests of Nigerians.
All right, let us take the Vanguard as our last paper for today. Top 10 banks pay 260.3 billion naira as income tax. You can find that on page 19. Swearing in Tinubu before tribunal judgment makes no sense. Tinubu will be sworn in. Avoid murky waters of politics. Kenyamo counters. You can find on page 28. And on election despot, allow judiciary decide. Gowon tells Atiku, Obi and others. Troops kill 76 terrorists in the northwest, rescue 136 abducted victims. Ekweremado's no fate today, so keep your fingers crossed and read more of that story on page 6. Industrial court stop NLC TUC strike in Imo State. You can find that too on page 19. Escape from Sudan, which is the big story, with gunfire all over. We thought we'll never see home again. Returnees tell tales of woes. You can find that on page 15. And we have the caption, the story showing them in various places while returning. And that's all on the Vanguard newspaper, and also how far we can go on the program this morning. Thanks, Joyce, for doing this.
Thank you, Celia. My pleasure.
Always. And thank you so much to our viewers, our supporters. Thank you to the crew members, our producer, the GM, and the Echo Executive. Until we come here again, do have a blessed weekend and be peaceful.